Welcome, everyone. It's great to see you at the webinar series organized by Language Cert. We're delighted that you can join us. We're going to give a few seconds for our colleagues to join. Please write a hello to the chat. The chat will be open for you and our speakers to see your responses, and we're also using the Q&A for questions. Welcome. My name is Silvia Karastaki. I'm the head of teacher support for Language Cert, and I'm going to be introducing our speaker in a moment. We're just giving you a few moments to join and to say hello. It's great that you're able to join us, and it's great to see you again in our Language Cert webinars. So this webinar is in the framework of cultivating a culture of care, and we're welcoming you to the fourth webinar of the series on caring through stories. And this series is especially developed for language teachers, and we have invited our speakers here to rethink the value of sharing our stories in and beyond the classroom in a world where AI tools can write an original story in a second. Just over a month ago, we had our online teachers event on the theme of empowering creativity through AI. But on balance, in this series, we want our four expert speakers to remind us of the incredible power and value of human storytelling, and also offer our language teachers concrete suggestions how to get students curious and creative about stories and storytelling. We have heard already in our previous sessions from speakers on storytelling for young learners, on the use of film and video, and also on stories for classroom management. Now, you can find these sessions and the previous sessions on our YouTube channel if you want to revisit them. And today, we're excited because we will be hearing about stories that raise awareness about environmental issues, targeting from very young learners to very young adults. It's a great pleasure to have with us Harry Waters. He does innovative work in sustainability-driven education. He wears many hats, as he says, literally and figuratively. You will see him in a picture in a moment, and he's already wearing it. He's a multi-award-winning trainer. He is also a teacher, a writer, but he's a climate activist and podcast host as well. As I said, he's into sustainability-driven education, and his website, check it out, Renewable English, is a platform merging language learning with environmental consciousness. I met him last year for the first time at Athea. We had such a great chat, and his voice is one that we want to hear. Thank you very much, Harry, for being with us. Good morning.
Thank you very much for inviting me. Thank you very much for having me. I'd like to apologize as I can't wear my hat due to the background unless I do something like this, but then I would look very strange if I did the whole webinar with my hands on my head. So I'm just going to take it off. I apologize. But thank you for having me.
Welcome.
I just noticed, I had a look in the chat. I can't type to everybody. For some, I don't know if it's my settings, but it's okay. I can speak to everybody and I can see everybody's messages, and I can see we have people here from Turkmenistan, from Vietnam, from Sri Lanka, from Greece, from Azerbaijan, from Ukraine, from France as well. I was recently in, oh, here we go, there we go. I can now chat to everybody. Look at that. The magical people behind the scenes fixing everything. The wonderful folk at Language fixed everything. So I can even say, hi, everyone. I'm in Seville, Spain. So hello, everybody. If I move too much or I put my hands in the wrong place, I apologize. Today's session is called A Story for the Climate Crisis. You will see me looking occasionally this way. That's because I've got my slides on this screen and my stories on this screen. And as Sylvia mentioned, this is all about different ways to raise awareness about the climate crisis, and each one of these four stories is a human created story. Some of them are based on real humans. Others are written by real humans about other things. So we'll get into these right now. So welcome, everybody. I can see we've got people turning up still. So I will slowly, again, move on. Now, as I say, these stories were created by humans. The images, however, were created by my group of 9, 10, and 11-year-olds using prompts on AI. So the images have been created by AI. The stories were written by myself, by my daughter, and the other 2 stories were created about real people. So they're just real life. So this is me, and you can see there I am wearing a hat. It's this hat. It's this famous hat, which probably needs a wash by now. And as mentioned before, I am a multi-award winning teacher trainer. You can't see them, they're behind me. A climate activist, a podcast host, a TEDx speaker, a kitchen singer, and a lover of hats. I've recently changed office, so I don't have my hat rack next to me. I can't show you all of them, but rest assured, I have many, which usually stop this kind of shiny thing happening off the top of my head. But don't worry about that. I hope it won't distract you too much. So this is me. Trying to see if I've got my super big clock as well to keep me aware and awake and not to go over time. So the big question is, I'm sure as you've been to other wonderful sessions, you will know this. So what are we doing today? And the first question is going to be storytelling, what and why. So while I'm talking about what we're going to talk about today, I would like you to think about why we might use storytelling. Very good question. Singing in the kitchen. Yes, while I'm cooking, I just endlessly sing, to be honest, which when I wake up at 6:30 in the morning is not much fun for my wife and daughter. And as we're talking about food in the kitchen, what is on the menu today? We will start with storytelling, what and why. And we're then going to kind of go through the ages. There's going to be a story for all of the ages. Of course, not every single age group, but we'll look at very young learners, we'll look at young learners, we'll look at young teens, older teens, and then I'm aiming for the last 7 minutes, hopefully. The last 7 minutes will be available for any questions you might have. Please do feel free to chuck them in the chat as well. I do have eyes on the chat, which for me is there, which feels strange because it's actually over there for me. And please rest assured at the end of the session, the slides will be made available, but also the stories and the recordings will also be made available. They're all in PDF format. They will be ready to be sent out to you. So the big question, storytelling, what and why? So why when it comes to, there's the answer. Why when it comes to the climate crisis is storytelling important? What is it and why do we use it? Go ahead and drop your answers into the old chatty bee or the chat box. Feel free. What is storytelling about the climate crisis and why do we use it? Oh, Fiona's forgotten to comb her hair. So don't worry, I can assure you that before we came on, we did spend time making sure that our beards were all in order. So there you go. Don't forget to always bring a beard comb. So thank you very much. Because we all love stories, says Varasamo. Absolutely. Stories are a wonderful way to connect. It's no use walking into a classroom with 3 to 6 year olds and saying to them, woof, did you know that so far this year we've released 10.4 billion gigatons of CO2. They'll just look at you like, what on earth are tons of CO2? What is 10 billion? And why are you talking about it? Oi, I just kicked the computer. That was silly. I was trying to close the door. Don't worry, I'm still here. It is a wonderful way to remember. I'll pop it up on the screen what I have written here when my computer decides to respond, which is going to be today. Don't worry. Here we go. It personalizes complex issues, making them relatable and understandable. I'm just going to read what's on the screen here. I'm sure you can read, but just in case there's anyone who can't see the screen very well, I will read it for you. They telling real life story. It is live. Very good, Eva. Stories are interesting. Yes, they can have metaphors that relate to real life that learn a lesson. Yes, everyone's getting involved now. This is brilliant. I love it. It transforms abstract data into compelling narratives, fostering emotional connections and motivating action, which in climate crisis education is so important. It's all good to be aware, but if we're not active, we will be consumed by eco-anxiety. So we need to do things. They inspire hope. They highlight real-world impacts and solutions. They bridge a gap between scientific knowledge and personal engagement, and they are crucial for driving meaningful change. I recently went to a conference. I spoke at a conference as well in Paris. And within that conference, every single session had a story. Every single session. Now, whether it was about degrowth economics or the magic of mycelium, which is the roots for mushrooms, every single thing had a story in there. Why? Because people engage with stories. People relate to stories. And we're going to start with very young learners. Now, I've adapted this story myself. I've written this story myself, and it's about the little tree that could. Now, when doing stories with very young learners, we have to remember that their English is not usually at a very high level. So this is usually for kind of 3 to 5 or 6 year olds. Now, I've used this story at my local school and with the infantile group. So there were about 100 students there who were between, again, as I said, I think there were 4 to 6. So in that storytelling arena, I did something that I don't usually do. Now, I do a lot of storytelling. I tell lots of stories, or cuentos, as we call them in Spanish. And I do a lot of storytelling with people from Italy, from Spain. And what I traditionally do is I get the big storybook and I go in there and I tell the story and I do the voices and I say to them, what can you see? What can you see? What can you see? What is here? What is this? And I ask them questions directly related to what they can see in the book. But this time I decided that I'd do something that I learned from one of my very good. They do believe everything an adult says. You're absolutely right. So when I went into this, I learned something recently doing a podcast, and that was from the wonderful folk from EL Tonics, from C and Sarah from L Tonics. And they talked about the curiosity involved with storytelling and not simply moving on from page to page and then at the end summing everything up, but sparking curiosity on every single page and getting students involved. Now, I know that these students didn't have a very high level of English, so I would let them answer the questions in Spanish after they tried to say something in English, but colors and things like that. There are lots of English words that they can use, but sometimes the deeper, more curious questions, they had to come in their mother tongue. It's natural. They're 3 to 6 years old, and we want the students to be involved. We want the students to be getting engaged with all of the different stories, with all of the different aspects behind the stories. So I've devised questions for this session, for this particular story, for every different part of the story. We can stop, we can ask questions, we can also tell the story. So the first page, as we'll see in a moment, starts by talking about some vibrant colors, and we can get our students involved by saying, what are some of the colors that you might see? What are some of the sounds that animals make? So we have the page, we have it open on this. Now, don't worry, as I mentioned, all of these resources will be very available. Colors absolutely relate to emotions. I love The Color Monster, one of my favorite stories. Brilliant story. So I would open the book, what can you name the colors you might see, and what sounds the animals make? Because there's nothing kids love more than making animal sounds. And again, it's something that changes from country to country. So when I say, what sound does a dog make? All of the students, wow, 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 wow. Because in Spanish, they say wow. In English, they say woof. What about in the country that you're in? What sound does a dog make in the country that you live in? I'm curious, how does a Greek dog speak? And I'm going to try it when I speak to my dog directly after this session. Bow. There we go. They can say bow, they can say wow, they can say woof. Bow, bow. Very good. I can almost hear you saying it. This is brilliant. So before we've even started, we've engaged our students in the story. We've made sure our students are ready. And I'm going to continue, if that's okay. Because as storytellers, it is important as well to use our story voices, but it goes beyond that. So we've engaged their curiosity. We've mentioned the idea of a vibrant forest, so vibrant, lots of colors, lots of sounds. So here we go. Once upon a time, in a vibrant forest, filled with whispering leaves and chattering animals, every creature and plant lived in harmony. This forest was not just a place. It was a bustling world of colours and songs where everyone had a special role to play. In the heart of the forest stood a little tree, its branches reaching up to the sky as if trying to grasp the sun. The little tree often felt too small to be of any real use, especially when it saw the larger trees so much shelter and shade. And when I get to this page, I like to ask my students, have you ever felt small? What did you do when you felt that way? And this is something that all young people can relate to. And it's something that maybe they won't be able to answer in English. Maybe they'll need to revert to their mother tongue to speak about how they feel. When I did it the other day, my students were saying, pues, profe, yo siento small cuando estoy con mis amigos y están con sus padres. Yo siento muy small because no puedo hacer nada con los grandes. So they try and use whatever words they can in English, but they also revert to their mother tongue. I feel small when I'm with my friends and they have their older brothers and sisters there. I feel like I can't do anything. And what did they do when they feel that way? So we're making sure we're relating our students' feelings to the story. We're engaging their curiosity because obviously our very young learners aren't actually trees. Our very young learners are young people out there in the world. So, one moonlit night, the little tree shared its worries with a wise old owl. The wise old owl listened carefully. Then she spoke in a gentle voice. Every creature, no matter how small, has the power to make a difference. Watch and learn the ways of the forest, and you will find your path. So if you were worried about, like the little tree, or like being small, who would you talk to? So you're asking your students who they would talk to if they feel too small. We're encouraging our students to speak if they feel like they can't do something, to hopefully empower them to ask for help, to try and make a difference. Because we all know that nobody can do everything, but everybody can do something. Asking our students, they will usually say they'll ask their parents, or maybe they'll ask their teachers. Inspired by the owl's words, the little tree observed the bustling life around her. She saw bees dancing from flower to flower, birds nesting in branches, the little earthworms enriching the soil. The little tree realized that every part of the forest relied on one another, and even the smallest flower played a crucial role. And we can ask our students, what do bees and birds do that's important for the forest? We can ask our students, what do the children do at school to make it a better place? Because the school isn't for teachers, the school is for the students. So again, we are relating the story to the students. We are relating our students to the story and the world around them. We're helping them feel like the little tree. At first nervous, but growing and feeling stronger and more important as they continue. The next picture, it was very difficult for my students. So what they did was they cut a picture of a sun and they placed it on top of a picture of the moon. So then came a day when the little tree noticed patches of bare ground where the other trees once stood. She felt a tug on her heart, understanding that the forest was hurting. Remembering the wise old owl's teachings, the little tree decided it was time to act, to do its part in healing the forest. So we can ask our students, how did the forest feel when the trees were gone? And this can be directly related to the world around our students. There can be all numbers of issues, environmental issues at the school. Maybe there is litter in the playground. Maybe on the way to school, they see any trees. Maybe there is a forest nearby that is being converted into housing. Maybe they have a river that is very dirty in the area. Maybe it is just litter that they can see. Maybe there are too many cars on the road. But we can relate this feeling of nature suffering to our students. And we can say, how do you think it made them feel? Do you see any of these things happening around you? With the help from the friendly squirrels, the chatty parrots, and even the busy bees, the little tree started its mission. They gathered seeds from the ground and planted them in the empty spaces, watered them with care, and protected them from trampling feet. So the tree decided to help the forest. What are some ways that we can help our planet? We can ask our students to connect what the tree has done to what they can do for the planet. What other things you can do? And we can relate this to other people around. We can do a litter pick, or we can save water, or we can tell our family about planting trees or planting flowers. What are the small things that we can do to make a difference? Because we can see that the little tree can make a difference with help from their friends, because nobody needs to work alone. We can all work together. As time went by, the forest began to change. New saplings sprouted, flowers bloomed, and the animals rejoiced in the returning abundance. The little tree stood taller, proud of the difference she had made. The forest was alive with a celebration for new growth. The little tree was at the heart of it all. The wise old owl, watching from her perch, nodded with approval. You see, even the smallest tree can inspire great change. So I would then ask my students, how would you celebrate the change that you made? How did the little tree make such a big change? And it was through inspiration. Told stories to the other animals on what they could do, how the forest was before, and what they could change. So for me, for very young learners, this is a lovely story that they can connect. All of the questions are available. All of the stories are available in PDF. Don't you worry, they're all, you can grab all of them, speak to the wonderful folk at Language Cert, and they will make them all available to you. So there we go. That was our story for very young learners. If you have any questions, feel free to pop them in there. Don't worry, it will. I'm sure it will all be sent to you, Fiona. I'm sure it's all there. It's all available. I just have to give it to the lovely folks at Language Cert as well. I've got it sitting here nicely in a folder. So, follow-up tasks. Make sure your students are aware that, no matter how small a creature is, they have the power to make a difference. Hello, Republic of Moldova. Are you in Chisinau by any chance? So there we go. And you can see the cool owl there. The thing that they take away is that. Some of the things I've done with my students, I've turned trash to treasure. You can see with my very young learners, I've created plant pots. We brought in our recycling, we painted them, and we made them look beautiful. We also did some propagation. All of my students now have their own plants. You can plant seeds, you can plant all sorts of different things, and it can all be done in the classroom. It's very, very simple to do, and it's a way of connecting our students to nature. Okay, moving on, because I know there's only half an hour left and we've got 3 stories to go. So I should get a shift on. So this story is for young learners, and it was written by a young learner. It's called The Fall of the Litterator, and it is based on a true story. Kind of based on a true story. You can see this image here. This image is taken from Vietnam. I know we have somebody here from Vietnam. It is a 37-kilo monster made of plastic waste, which represents the 37 kilos of waste created by each individual in Vietnam. Now, that is not a huge amount because other countries create much more, but that is the story behind it. And that is one of the things that inspired Alethea to write the story. So this story is much shorter than the other one. As I say, it was written by a 9-year-old at the time who's now 10. So here we go. You can see it on your screen, but I'll read it for you as well. All of my details will be available at the end, Fiona, don't you worry. One day at the beach, there was a girl called Alethea. She was swimming in the ocean when suddenly she felt something brush against her leg. She was terrified. She thought it was a jellyfish. She swam out of the water as fast as she could and ran to her towel on the shore. As soon as she got out of the water, she realized it wasn't a jellyfish at all, but a plastic bag. From that moment forward, she knew she wanted to dedicate her life to help rid the world of plastic pollution. That night, she saw something disgusting. It was a huge and vile and incredibly scary. But Alethea wasn't scared. She put on her suit and she ran out of her front door. It was the Litternator. The Litternator was the worst, ugliest, most awful of all the monsters. Alethea knew she could not fight this fight alone. So she gathered everyone in her village and all her friends from the CAP Club, that's Kids Against Plastic, to take down the beast. Between them all, working as a team, they took down the Litternator. After the Litternator was defeated, everyone started cheering and celebrated. They all thanked Alethea for what she had done. But Alethea didn't want praise or cheers. She just wanted to make sure that everyone worked together to make sure the Litternator never came back. And you know what? It never did. You absolutely can do so many things in class about recycling and pollution issues. And this is something that Alethea took. Now, Alethea is my daughter, and you saw her in the previous picture. And these are some of the ideas. Ask your students the moral of the story. What is the moral of the story? Well, the moral of that story is that we need to work together to reduce plastic pollution. Again, it's all about working together. It's talking about individual power to collective action. One person inspiring many people to do something. Look at the truth behind the story. So as I said, it's kind of based on a true story. It really is. And I'll show you that story very, very shortly. And you can do that. Write a haiku. It's a great time to get creative with your students. You know, I love writing haikus and poems with my young learner classes. I have classes from, they are 8 and 9 now. And the other class I have are from there's a 10-year-old in there, but there's also a 12-year-old in there. So they're from 10 to 12. And we write lots of haikus. It is Japanese poetry, and it goes 5 syllables, 7 syllables, and then 5 syllables again. So we could say the Litternator, there's 5, was defeated by a team and never returned. There you go. It's very simple. Yes, it's easier for us because we have worked with English a lot, but working with this very simple structure gives your students the opportunity to write their own story. It's a short story. It's only 3 lines, but they can write their own story that way, and they're starting to use creative writing. Get your students to write their own story. Oh, different bins is brilliant. And yeah, when they make the bins themselves, they feel so much more connected to them. They're upcycling as well. They're using things that already exist. And then we can get our students to go on a litter pick. And another story that I love to tell my students on a litter pick is the life story, the life cycle of a plastic bottle. And we give a plastic bottle, we give it a life. You know, we create it. We get our students to talk about where a plastic bottle has come from. So the mother of the plastic bottle is about 3 liters of water, and the father is 250 milliliters of oil. Together they make a bottle, and the whole time they're creating CO2. We give this personality to the bottle, and we show the bottle going, it's filled up and it's happy because it has its juice inside it. And then somebody buys it, they take it home, they drink the juice, and then they throw it away. And that bottle is then there for 450 years. It sees everything around it grow up and move on, but it just sits there before it disintegrates. So yeah, you can also turn the life cycle of a plastic bottle into a story. But if you want to use the story of the Littlenator, behind it is the history of a little girl. Her name is Alethea. There she is. There are a few articles written about her. But she even says, there's a quote there from her, "It doesn't matter if you are old or young, tall or short, everyone can make a difference." And the key again is about everybody making a difference, everybody doing something. And this will give somebody for your students to relate to. She's only 10 and she's out there trying to make a difference. She's trying to collect 1 million pieces of litter from the environment. She's trying to do something and get other people working together to do something with her. There you go. Eva made a bottle with glitter and rice, which made a beautiful thing and a nice sound. Now, for me, the easiest people to get involved with the climate crisis, to get involved with environmental action, the easiest people are these young learners and very young learners, because there are so many crafts that you can do. There are so many stories that you can tell. There are so many ways that they can become related to these environmental issues, and it is going to affect them in the future. So we need to make sure that we do get them involved, we do get them connected. It's more difficult when it comes to teens. Now, the stories I've chosen for teens, I have rewritten one of them, so it's of a simpler level. We're going to watch the video with the story told by the person herself, one of my favorite people in the entire world. She's absolutely incredible, a very empowered young woman who has started her own group. So we'll have a look at that in just a moment. But yeah, when it comes to our young learners, it's so easy to get them connected to the environment, and showing them examples, case studies of young people doing things. They can see that they can make a difference. These stories connect them to it. It's not about telling them, that there's loads of plastic is released into the environment or the damage that the plastic will do on the environment, but showing them what they can do to stop that plastic ever getting out there into the environment. And feel free to use all of these materials at your will. They are yours. What's mine is yours, except my hat. My hat is my hat, and I'm keeping it forever. Exactly. It is a bit like a fairy tale. So young, empowered, and aware. We're noticing more and more with our young teens that they're more interested in the environment. Not all of them, and this is the big difference. We need to make sure we take our students that they don't feel fear, but they feel maybe even anger. It's fine, but feel that they want to do something. The worst feeling of all is apathy. When we have students coming to our classes and they don't care about the environment, that's when we know things aren't okay. So, starting, as we look with our very young learners, we can see that when we're telling the story, we keep our questions, we keep the curiosity going throughout. We build them up as we go page by page to keep them engaged, to keep them connected. With our young learners, there's a bit of work beforehand, but then quite a lot of follow-up. Now, when it comes to teens, I like to do a lot of work beforehand, the story, and then a lot of work afterwards as well. So I would ask them, what is an activist? If you want to answer, please feel free to do so in the chat box. What is an activist? You can even say, ask them to name some activists. The immediate answer is always Greta Thunberg. Always Greta. Everyone says an activist is Greta, and they have that image of what an activist should be. And then the questions, are activists good or bad? So again, we can maybe look at some of the Just Stop Oil protests that there have been, where activists have thrown paint at artwork and things like that. And we can talk about that. And activists, the ones making a difference, great. Exactly. Many activists involved are the same age as our students. And then the question of, should activists be perfect? Now, this is something I have struggled with myself. My daughter struggles with it. And it's really difficult to be an activist because people look at you and think, oh, you shouldn't do that, or oh, you can't do that. You're an activist. You know, I'm a vegan. I ride my bike wherever I can. I only buy secondhand clothes, but I do have a petrol car. I can see the issues with an electric car. But being a perfect activist, this idea of a perfect activist should be dispelled. Now, I'm going to show you this wonderful human. I will turn off my camera so I don't distract you while we're watching the video. I do have this story in much simpler English so we can read it, we can share it with our students. But for now, I'd like to show you, as we say in English, from the horse's mouth. Apologies, Clover. I'm not calling you a horse. This is all about Clover Hogan, who started Force of Nature. And she tells her story about how she became an activist.
When I turned
Can everyone hear that? Now, the link is in there for the full video. So could you hear when I turned 11? Please tell me. Anyone? Hello? Excellent. We can hear. So I'll put this back to the start. We've got about 2 minutes here, and I'm going to... Okay, here we go. Let's see.
When I turned 11, I declared to my parents over dinner that I wanted to become an activist. Now, it was a bold statement built on a promise to myself that I wouldn't just be an activist, but I would be the most devout activist possible. 12 years later, and I'm a strict vegetarian. Except for when I gorge on salmon sushi, kitchen lights off, should anyone discover my shameful secret. Like my boyfriend, who I only half-jokingly remind meat is murder every time he tries to order a hamburger. I don't shop fast fashion, except for socks. No matter how sustainable I want to be, I just can't justify €12 on a bit of eco-cloth to swaddle my feet. And come to think of it, I haven't really had to buy fashion for some time because of the amount I'm gifted by brands hoping I'll model them to my meager Instagram following. I refuse to drive a car, aka a gas-guzzling, planet-destroying combustion engine. Except when it's an absolute emergency, like when it's raining. Or when the idea of cozying up to a stranger on the bus is enough to make me want to throw myself in front of one. I've posted petitions against the destructive and toxic mining of copper and lithium from devices that would not function without them. Over the past decade, my idealistic activism has become a parade of caveats and contradictions.
Now, it goes on, of course, you've got the full link there. It's about a 15-minute keynote speech. And it's all about this idea of a perfect activist and how the perfect activist doesn't need to exist, because we need lots of imperfect activists, not a few perfect activists, because it's very hard to do everything. Now, I can see Fiona is a pure vegan. as well. It's incredibly difficult if you go out to eat in a restaurant. Quite often I have to eat just chips because here in a village in Spain, everything is meat. Everything is meat. So I like to show my students this wonderful young human who has been an activist for 12 years, and she has gone through the full remit of emotions, from that state of being perfect to realizing, come on, nobody can be perfect. And you cannot beat yourself up, because if you try to be perfect, if you try to be a perfect activist, and you'll see in the next part of the video that her tone changes from this kind of joking tone, you can see that it leads to burnout, and nobody wants to burn out. There we go. So from that, I would ask my students to write a social media post, because when we have young teens, social media posts are a fantastic way to get our students engaged. Write a post about not being a perfect activist. Write a post about the mistakes that you've made. Write a post that is honest and open and personal to show the world that, hey, I try, but I'm not perfect. You know, sometimes when I'm desperate, I eat eggs. I'm not perfect, but I eat eggs. Should get them to show that, get them to connect with these things and show that, you know what, there are things that I don't do that are perfect, but I do also do great things. And bearing your soul on social media like that, being open, being human, is much better than always being fake and everything is perfect and everything is amazing, because everything isn't always amazing. It's all about being honest and genuine. And that way, more people will listen to you and your ideas. I love to get my students to create comics using AI. That way, they have to create all of the images using different prompts, writing lots of different things in there. So I get them to create the images using AI and the writing they do on their own. So that way they doubly use English, because they have to write the prompts. And a great thing you can do with that, with the images that they've created, their comic, their different vignettes, the other students have to guess what was the prompt that they used to create that vignette. So you're using lots of English in doing this. This isn't just about awareness of the climate crisis. This is about using English more and more and more. In the early stages, in the very young learner stages, it's more about listening, digesting, and whatever English they can use. This is really extracting as much English as you can. Getting your students to do a personal impact reflection. What are the things that I can do? What can I do and what can't I do? Well, there's one thing I can't do. I can't dismantle the capitalist economic system and destroy fossil fuels. What can I do? Well, I can encourage my parents, my family, to not buy single-use plastics. And doing that with the personal impact reflection, what have I done? What have I changed? Then we talk about what can I do diary. Every day, the different things that they can do. Just write one thing that they can do differently that day. Today, I walked to school and I didn't take the car. Or today, me and 3 of my friends came together in the car. Today, when I went to the store, I made sure I didn't buy any single-use plastic. All of these different things make a difference. Today, I didn't have a shower when maybe I should. No, I'm joking. So all of these ideas, and showing your students the differences they can make, showing them their capability and not their responsibility, because far too often we say to our students, you are going to change the world. People say it to my daughter all the time, you can change the world. Dude, she's 10. She can't change the world. She can make a difference, but she's not going to change the whole world. And realizing that when we get together, the difference we can make, our sphere of influence grows. And we can do this through stories. We can teach our students how to use these stories and tell them on another level. I'm going to have to hurry up because I've got 3 minutes. Now, these are the younger teens' ideas. When we talk about older teens, we never, ever look at finances. financing is something our older teens are starting to understand. They're starting to get money, but we never talk about that with our students. We never talk about what they're supposed to do with their money, how they're supposed to spend their money. We teach them lots of different things, but I'll tell you what, I didn't learn about money until I was at university and I didn't have any. And suddenly I was like, I was tearing my hair out, which I guess doesn't really work anymore. I was pulling at my beard. So telling them it's financing the future, asking them what they know. What would they like to learn about finances? What are the different ideas that they can have about finances? Now, sadly, I don't have quite enough time to show you the whole story. It is on the PowerPoint and it's called Financing the Future. In a world tipping on the edge of tomorrow, Alex and Jordan found themselves caught between adolescence and the awakening of global responsibility. So this is a story all about two students who were given a project all about learning about financing and where the money was going and who it was being used with, because quite often we don't even realize that the banks that we are using, thank you very much, Sylvia. It's a 4-minute video though, so I'll summarize. And everybody can listen to it afterwards. I have a problem with storytelling. I get too into the story and I sometimes go over. So learning on where our students can put their money, learning on students when they get their money, which banks they should go to, which banks they should use, which banks they shouldn't use, where they should invest their money. And learning at 16, 17 and 18 years old is much better, much better than learning at a later date. Now, as I told you, all of these ideas, you can have it as this voiceover if you want. And the story talks about how the students started in their school. They started their sustainable banking in their school, and then they moved to bigger communities. And even when the project had finished, they could see the impact that it had. Simply stopping and looking at where we invest our money, where we have our banks. It's a very simple thing that we can do. We can look at where our different banks invest their money and we can change it just like that. There are lots of green banks, and this is one of the very simple ways of making a huge difference. And we can show our students of the massive impact they can make when they're 15 years old, simply by choosing the correct bank. Now, that is boring if we just do it in class. But if we show them a story about two genuine students that really exist, then they'll be a lot more likely to be connected to the story, to the idea, and much more likely to financing account the future. There we go. So the main takeaways from the story, and were they aware of fossil fuel investment? So these follow-up questions are super important. And from that, we can do a green investment challenge and say to them all, I don't know, maybe if all of us take €5, we can all invest that in a green initiative and see where that goes. Or maybe they can take €5 each and they can start their own sustainable business by making flower pots and selling them and making more money. Digital advocacy, showing them, getting them to speak up online and talk about these different ideas. And following the money is a very simple thing that Ingmar Redzog talks about, that at the moment, governments and banks invest $7 trillion every year in the fossil fuel industry. 4.5 trillion is what's needed for renewable investment. It's very simple. Take that 7 trillion that is being given to these fossil fuel companies and move it across to renewable energies. Now, everybody says, wow, Shell made record profits last year. They made record profits because they were given record subsidies. It cannot be a profitable business if it relies on 7 trillion every year to keep it going. So raising that awareness of these issues is super important. Now, we have a Q&A session coming up. I did promise you, so I'm going to say thank you. I did promise you my details. There they are. I'm going to bring back, oh, there they are. They're going to disappear again because they're on a timer. So get your screenshot now. I'm going to invite back my wonderful compañera. There we go. Hello. Should I stop sharing my screen now?
Thank you.
I'm going to stop
You
sharing.
can leave it on.
Okay. Anyone who wants to get involved, get in touch, is there somewhere.
Thank you so much for these inspiring stories that call to action, and they also include actionable activities with students. We're going to ask if anyone has questions to place them in the Q&A or in the chat. So one of the things that I was wondering as I was listening to this is, to what extent do you find that going global or going local is more effective in terms of getting them to start thinking about these issues? Is it about looking at the immediate surroundings? Is it about looking at the bigger global picture? Can you talk a little bit about that and the value and effect of each of the choices?
Absolutely, yeah. It's always important to go local first. I like to talk about local. So think global, but act local. So you've got to look at the bigger issues on a world scale, but you can't change those. You can't stop the ice caps melting, but you need to know that it's happening. You can't save all of the tigers in the world, but you can be aware of it. But what you can do, what you can change, is the world around you. You can change your school's policy on single-use plastic. You can help your school raise money to have solar panels installed. Now, if you're in Greece, I'm guessing that's a great idea. If you're in the UK, maybe not so much. Not much sun there. But here in Spain, my daughter did that in her school. They had a campaign to raise money, and they now have solar panels. So it's these very simple things that we can do on a local level. We can encourage for electric parking in the local area, for the charging points nearby, because we have one in our whole village. But luckily, there are only 3 electric cars in the village, so it doesn't really matter. But hopefully, there'll be more in future. So always think global, act local, but also think local as well.
Thank you. And just one other thing that is always interesting in these contexts, the materials that you use. I mean, you showed us here your stories. So where else can teachers who are interested in this topic, where can they source materials? Talk to us a little bit about how you source lesson ideas for these types of lessons.
I look all over, to be honest. I usually, because when I'm doing research, I watch a lot of videos, a lot of talks. So I see a lot of things like the Clover Hogan talk, for example. There's a lot of those things that I watch, and it all involves storytelling. There's always storytelling involved in every single talk that there is. So I collect those ideas from there. And then I just kind of build on it, and I see what my students need, what my students want. So with the little tree that could, I'd heard a story similar to that when I was younger, and I thought that is perfect because it's about tree planting, it's about trees that are growing, and it also connects to students being smaller. So I take it in from the world around me and I build it up from there. Now, I'm quite a creative person, so for me, it comes fairly easily. I'm very lucky, but there are lots of sci-fi books out there, which is climate fiction, which are really fun to read as well. But yeah, there's loads of materials on things like force of nature, on renewable English. In fact, I'm going to put all of these things up on the website as well, but I will send them all to you, so you can send them to all of the people who attended today, and anyone that registered. I'm sure you make it all available. But they're all there. So there will be at least 4 stories for people to start with. But yeah, I love storytelling. It's something I'm really keen on. So I take it from the world around me and I see what needs to change, and from that I build a story, or I ask my students to write a story.
Mm-hmm.
Because
So
they're
we have
so
here our
creative.
global, thank you. We have here our global community, and there is a teacher from Pakistan, who talks about the country being very much affected by global warming. And they're wondering, as a teacher, how can, they bring that issue up with their students. So if you can talk a little bit about that, resources or ideas around that more particular subject of global warming.
Absolutely. Now it's really difficult. I work with a lot of people in Pakistan and India, and there were horrendous heat waves last year, and I'm sure the horrendous heat waves will probably return. But then they also were hit with massive floods, which these are issues that are happening around them. Now, for me, when my students experience an ecological event, it makes them so much more acutely aware of these ideas that are happening. It makes them more aware, and it can sometimes make them feel more activated. It can also make them feel more anxious, and it can also make them feel like more powerless. But they are made more aware, and they can connect to these ideas, and then they can do what they can. Now, to stop flooding, it's not something we can do, but what we can do is prepare where we live, prepare our houses, prepare different things so we're ready in the event that there might be a flood. And we can look at this. There is the mitigation side of climate change and the climate crisis, but there's also the adaptation. So we need to be aware that things are changing. We need to be ready to adapt. So for example, in my house, we now have rainwater collection. So if it does rain, we can collect that water, because in Andalusia, we're suffering very serious droughts. So it's also about thinking how we can adapt to the situation.
Thank you so much, Harry. This is such a massive topic, and I'm sure, it's a topic where we're going to be hearing a lot more in the future as it becomes, a lot more, I don't want to say mainstream, but people are interested, they want to hear about these topics, and students, they are bringing them into the classroom as well. Thank you very much for all the things you've shared. We're going to upload the recording of this, and we're going to link to your resources on this recording on our YouTube channel. So the teachers that were here today, they will be able to find these resources when we upload this, and we link to the resources on the YouTube channel. So there's going to be a short survey when we finish the webinar. We would really appreciate your feedback. It's always great to host our speakers, and for us here, you will be receiving a certificate of attendance, those of you who are here with us today. As always, yes, this is very highly sort of valued from our community. Well, thank you very much for being here with us. Please keep an eye on our website for what's coming next in the next months, in May and June as well. We have more exciting things coming up. Harry, thank you so much for your energy and sharing so many wonderful ideas with us. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much.
See you again.
Thanks for coming,
Bye-bye.
everyone.